Did you know that Chicken Soup for the Soul, like the famous books that, bring joy and love and tenderness to our hearts, got turned down 144 times by different publishers? Okay, I don't know if I have the number exactly correct. I actually thought it was like something like 60, but I just looked it up and apparently it was 144. And I'm using the word specifically turned down instead of rejected, because if the people who came up with the idea of Chicken Soup for the Soul felt like it was rejection, because I feel like rejection kind of insinuates that there's something wrong with the people or the product that made it. If they took it as a rejection, they would have stopped. They would have stopped at the first 10, 20, 30, 60, whatever it was. But they didn't take it as like there was a problem with their product or with them. They kept going. And eventually, someone did say yes to publishing the books. And they're some of the most popular books in the world. And I can tell you from personal experience that I've met one person, one publisher, that actually was one of the ones that turned down the books, and he still to this day, years later, just cannot believe that he made that quote-unquote mistake. And I've heard other publishers, like big-time publishers, speak about how they did the same thing, that they turned it down and they regret it so much. So this video is a continuation of what I was talking about in terms of rejection. In my last video, I said that I believe that we never actually get rejected. Because for me, rejection means that someone is putting you down for something that you believe in, or something that you represent, or just you, and they're saying like, you're not good enough. But in the case of this book and this series of books, it wasn't the people that created the book that was the problem. It was that the people that turned them down didn't believe in them. The product didn't resonate for them as something that would work. But they weren't exactly rejected. They were just moved in the direction of someone that would really believe in them. And I feel like this happens so much in our lives, where we assume that if someone says no to something that we wanted them to say yes to, or if someone doesn't react the way that we wanted them to, that this means that there's something wrong with us, that we do not hold up a standard that they wanted, and that means that we are the problem. But actually, as I was saying in my last video, oftentimes that feeling of being rejected is not, it's not really us being turned down. It's that we have not realized that our memory, our perception from a long time ago, has gathered up data that most of the time is not even true, that made us think that we are less than worthy of being chosen or accepted the way that we are. And we carry that in our subconscious. So when we go out into the big, busy world out there, if something vaguely even resembles what we learned in our childhood or what we perceived in our childhood that says that we weren't good enough, we say, aha, see, this is proof that I knew that I wasn't good enough, or that time when I was a child or whatever that happened, that I felt like someone was rejecting me, it's happening again, and I'm being rejected again. But that feeling of being rejected actually is something that we misinterpreted from a long time ago. I use the example of an event that I went to a few days ago, and I thought I was being rejected by a bunch of people, which I later realized that I wasn't. And I said that I could remember feeling like that in high school, like feeling like I didn't fit in, feeling like I was being rejected over and over again. But actually, I can think of one person in particular, or a couple of guys in particular in high school that were quite popular. I felt like were really rejecting me, and they kind of made fun of me, and they made me really hate high school. Like, I was nervous about going to school because of them. And years later, I ran into one of them outside a stand for like energy drinks and smoothies and stuff like that. And he didn't recognize me, but I definitely recognized him because he was kind of burned into my memory of like making me feel really not accepted. And yeah, anyway. And when I asked him like how these energy drinks and supplements and stuff helped him, he said that he started getting into like health and wellness because he had a lot of psychological kind of things going on growing up. And he said that he didn't feel good about himself as he was like growing up as a child and in high school. And I couldn't believe it, because this guy came across like he was kind of like a bully, but he also came across as if he's like all that. And you know, his opinion somehow meant a lot to me because he put on this front of like he's so great. And I don't know, like obviously I was really insecure, but when I heard from him directly that he felt so awful when he was growing up, and he was so depressed, and he had like, I think, suicidal thoughts and all this stuff, I was shocked, because I was like, here I was kind of traumatized throughout high school because of him and a couple of his friends, because I thought I was being rejected. But little did I know until years later that he felt so much worse, and he thought he was so rejected that he was like covering up that depression and anxiety and hurt by putting up this like facade in high school to try to just get through. It was amazing that this moment actually happened with him and I, because by the end of it, he still didn't know who I was, but I started questioning who I was, because I molded my sense of self around what people like that thought of me, or what I perceived them to think of me. Little did I know that they didn't even think very highly of themselves. And I took that in, I took it in my heart that that represented something negative about me. And I think that so many times in our lives, we don't realize that when we think that we are being rejected, it's not even rejection. It's like a coping mechanism that someone else is using to try to get through their own life. And some people could have gone through the exact same experience that I did and not have flinched at all. Like it wouldn't have affected them. They wouldn't have cared what this guy thought. I'm sure there were people in high school that didn't care what he thought. So why did I take it as a rejection? Why did the people that wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, instead of taking all the, turn down, publishers that turn them down, instead of taking that as a rejection and thinking that they're not good enough, what made them continue and keep going? Well, oftentimes the difference between those two different scenarios and two different reactions is something that gets ingrained in us from, like, even before, my experience in high school. When I was younger, I don't remember exactly when, but I'm sure that there were moments and experiences that I grew up with from, like, early on, just like as a very young child, where I started doubting myself, where I, learned that I wasn't good enough, or that learned is like, that's a difficult word to use here because it wasn't the truth, but that's how I perceived things. So this feeling of rejection actually comes from our perception of what we see around us. And I can tell you right now, my mom never, ever made me feel rejected. But I'm sure that when I was around people that, maybe I didn't feel comfortable voicing my opinion about something, or someone, like, shut me down, or I thought they were shutting my opinion down, or didn't take me seriously. My dad, I've said this before, I'm sure he was a really good person, but he wasn't really around. And they say, like, that kind of energy can really affect us subconsciously, that we think that we have to always do something to make someone stick around and prove to them that we're worthy of them staying around. And those kind of things can, like, we don't realize how much they mold our sense of our value. And then when I go to high school compared to someone else that goes to high school, and if we are both around this, like, bully person that, made fun of me, like, if the same person made fun of the other high school kid, I would be the one that would take it as rejection and take it to heart, that it's like a statement about myself. Whereas another person who doesn't have this sense of, like, oh, they're not worthy, or they're that they have to, like, prove to someone how great they are in order to be worthy of love, they would just laugh off what this person, this bully, was doing, maybe even feel sorry for them. And actually, they probably wouldn't even be bullied by that person, because the bully, or the person that's hurt, that is, like, trying to make everyone feel bad, can kind of gauge when someone has a low self-worth, because they're probably feeling the same thing. And they target the people that feel, that they know would feel rejected. And I was one of them. And a lot of times we think that we are being rejected, but actually there's no rejection going on. It's that we already feel low about ourselves, and our subconscious tries to find proof, quote unquote proof, that we were right all along, that we're not as valuable as someone else. And it's amazing to me because, like, I see, I mean, as a teacher, and even when I see some of my friends who have like brothers and sisters that are in high school, or even when I look at my nieces, like, some of these high school kids show up at school and they would never react the way that I did in terms of letting their self-esteem go down. They're actually like quite self-confident. Um, they don't take things as if they are being rejected. And I think that oftentimes we misunderstand that when someone says no to us, it actually most of the time has very little to do with our, I mean, it doesn't have to do with our value. It has to do with what the other person needs at the time, what the other person can even handle at that time. Like the people that said no to the writers of Chicken Soup for the Soul, they didn't know that this could be like an amazing series. They weren't ready for that because they didn't see the possibilities. And I think that when we realize that that had no bearing on the value that the writers could bring to that book, or to their to the writing of it, or to the, you know, publishing world, but it had more to do with how valuable those people could see themselves being. Like, when I know when I feel rejected from something or someone, it's because I don't feel valuable already. And so as soon as someone says no to me, or looks the other way, or I feel like they're not responding the way that I wish they would, I automatically will think, oh, it's about me, and they want to choose someone else, and I'm not like good enough for them. But actually, if I have the confidence in myself, I would just be thinking, okay, they're not the right person for me, and I can steer my way in a direction where someone can appreciate me. Just like the writers of Chicken Soup for the Soul found a publisher that was like, yeah, we'll take you on, and they soared with that. So I just kind of wanted to leave you with this message that oftentimes we think, you know, some people have said to me, like, how can you say that there is no rejection? Well, rejection, I think, is a state of mind. And the reason that we feel this feeling, this sense of rejection, actually stems from way back experiences that we've learned, that we've misinterpreted as like our sense of worth. And our subconscious tries to find proof that we were right. But I'm going to challenge you to find proof that maybe you were wrong. Maybe you weren't ever being rejected. Maybe it's time to find proof that the universe is guiding you to the right people, to the right publishers, to the right people that are accepting you. And just like that guy from high school, like, we don't know what the people that quote unquote seem to be rejecting us are going through themselves. Maybe they feel rejected. And I have now been seeing that the more I can open my eyes to this, the more I don't look at experiences that seem to close me off to something as a rejection. I see it as like, oh, that's opening me up to something that is way better for me, and something that is more in line with what I want. So I'm going to leave you with that, and let me know if you have any questions. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.